Welcome to week 10 of Level Design for Games, Odds and Ends. So this week, I wanted to talk about a number of different topics, some related, some that aren't, but a lot of things that I kind of wanted to talk about in other lectures, but I never really found a good place to talk about them. So just basically some important things that I want to sort of get across to you guys. So starting with a few things that are left over from our combat lecture. So let's start with essentially how we go about starting up designing a combat setup and the things that we sort of need to consider. And so essentially this is a quick combat setup checklist, how to what things that you need to think about when we're setting up combat. So one thing on that, first thing is enemy presentation. So how is it that the player is first going to be seeing the enemy? What are they doing? Do they have any goals aside from killing the player? Like, are they defending a particular position? Are they trying to go to a particular position? Like they're on their way, they're traveling somewhere. Are they fighting other enemy threats? This is sort of the thing that if you want to have a polished sort of game experience with your enemies, thinking about like what are their motivations in this world as well. What lives do they have outside of what we experience as the player? And essentially making it feel like they're not just kind of coming out of around the corner or something like that. They have some sort of purpose that they're sort of moving through this space. Second thing is in combat is goals. What is the player trying to attain through this fight? Do they need to kill all the enemies here? Why is that the case? Are the enemies keeping you from reaching a particular position? Are they just in your way and they're high risk and you need to take them out so that you can get past? So try to consider how to communicate to the player that what their goals are, instead of just actually just kind of killing everyone in the combat setup. Third, think about your setting. Think about what it is, the space that you're creating, and how how that space, what sort of cover objects, for instance, are appropriate for that space. Are we looking at sort of smaller spaces? Are we looking for smaller cover objects? Are we looking for large cover objects? Do we have a lot of verticality? That sort of thing. What about weather? Visibility, how is that affecting gameplay, or the lighting, that sort of thing. A lot of times we sort of build and block out and we aren't really thinking about what the eventual aesthetic look is going to be, the lighting and stuff like that. And it's really important to get that early on, because if you are making a space pretty foggy, for instance, that's going to affect how well you're going to be able to see the enemy. So try to match that as closely as possible. What specific shapes in this environment do we have as affordances and denials? What's special about this environment that sets it apart from other combat setups, so that there's a nice variation between setups. Fourth, is narrative. How do these enemies fit into the overall player antagonism? What's their prior history with the player? Are they looking for the player? Are they just going to, if they see the player, they're going to shoot on sight, and or is there going to be some sort of question about it? It's good for us as designers to think about our enemies as real people. They're not just mindless automatons. We want them to feel like they belong in this world and that they're living people. So we need to give that humanity to them, and that as designers, that's sort of part of our job. Lastly, as far as combat setups, thinking about the mechanics. Is there any particular gameplay mechanic that you want to feature? Is there a new gun that you just got? Is there a new mechanic as far as like climbing or some sort of traversal, some sort of combat opportunity that is in place here? And then secondly, what is the skill level of that particular gameplay mechanic? Is this the first time you're using it, or is this more of this is the super challenging area where you're using that mechanic to its fullest? So a lot of these things are pretty hard to represent on our Unity game prototype. So when we're looking at, for instance, today's assignment, I'm not really expecting a lot of this necessarily to come across. And this is kind of, we're lacking a lot of things like, animations, voiceovers. Our mechanics are fairly limited, but I just want to get this out there because when you're working on a retail game, this is the kind of thing that you want to be sure is part of your planning of the space, and make sure that you communicate to your narrative team, to your systems team, things that will help your particular combat setup sing. Next, moving on to what I call combat space models.